folks who make it past 75 often share a secret that isn't really a secret at all. It's the way they move through life in those pivotal years between 65 and 75. Those who cherish their days and keep their spirits high tend to focus on living well, not just surviving, and that choice shapes everything that follows. Dear friends, as we step into that decade, it's easy to think we're coasting into a quieter phase, a time to kick back and let the world spin on without us. But here's the catch. Those little routines we settle into, the ones we barely notice, can either build us up or slowly chip away at what's left. What seems like a harmless habit today might be the very thing that dims our spark tomorrow. There's nothing more precious than learning to lean on ourselves, because even the most devoted family can't always be there. They've got their own roads to walk. An old saying puts it plain, self-reliance and a steady hand on your own well-being are the truest riches in later years. When we stand on our own 2 feet, we don't just live longer, we live freer with a dignity that's hard to shake. So how do we dodge the traps that pull us down and stretch our time instead? Let's peel back the layers of what so many unknowingly stumble into. Habits that quietly trim their years short. That 65 to 75 stretch. It's the golden era of longevity, the make-or-break decade that decides if we're in it for the long haul or checking out early. Stick with me as we dig in, because this is where the real wisdom unfolds. There's an old line that goes, 3 parts fate, 7 parts fight, and it rings true here. Life isn't just what's handed to us, it's what we do with it. For those in their later years, chasing after crystal balls or fretting over what's next can drain more than it gives. Instead of pouring time and coins into guesses, the real gold lies in keeping your head clear and your body strong. Worry gnaws at the mind, but a steady diet, a good walk, a laugh with someone close. These are the threads that weave a longer, brighter life. Living with a smile and a light heart beats any fortune teller's promise hands down. It's about taking the reins, not waiting for the stars to align, because a proactive step today can pave the way for a peaceful tomorrow. Now, as the years pile on, our bodies don't bend or bounce back like they used to. A careless twist, a reach too high, a step too quick. It's all riskier than it seems. One tumble could mean more than a bruise. It could pin you to a bed for good. And that doesn't just hit you, it ripples out, tugging at the ones who love you, pulling them into a tougher spot. The fix isn't complicated. Move with care. Skip the ladder. Clear the clutter from your path. A few tweaks, maybe a handrail or a lamp, where shadows pool, can keep you steady and safe. It's not about giving up. It's about guarding what keeps you going, so life stays calm and full instead of fraying at the edges. Money matters more when the paychecks stop rolling in. It's not just about covering the basics. It's the buffer that keeps you free when the unexpected knocks. Medical bills, a helping hand, a sudden fix, these creep up fast, and without a cushion, you're scrambling. That scramble steals peace, stirs up worry, even sours ties with family, if you're forced to lean too hard. The ones who thrive past 75 often figured this out early. They stashed a little away, played it smart with what they had, kept their spending in check. It's not about hoarding, it's about resting easy, knowing you've got enough to weather the storms without burdening anyone else. That kind of planning doesn't just buy comfort, it buys dignity. Health, though, trumps it all. The older we get, the more the body creaks, the slower it heals. Push too hard in that 65 to 75 window, lifting heavy, skipping sleep, ignoring the aches, and you're rolling the dice on something bigger. Plenty of folks keep acting like they're 40, toughing it out, but that's a gamble that doesn't pay off. Overdo it, and you're not just tired, you're flirting with heart strain, worn joints, maybe worse. The trick is knowing when to ease up, swapping the heavy lifting for a walk or a stretch, giving yourself room to rest. It's that balance, moving enough to stay sharp, resting enough to recover, that keeps the engine humming without burning out. Some who've seen hard days cling tight to every penny, every scrap. They'll eat what's gone off, rather than toss it, skip a new coat to save a buck. But here's the twist. Old age isn't the time to pinch. It's the time to savor. After decades of grinding, a good meal or a warm pair of shoes isn't indulgence. It's earned. Skimp too much, and you might miss the nutrients your body's begging for, trading health for thrift. The old wisdom nails it. What you've got doesn't tag along when you go, so use it to live well now. A little joy, a treat, a trip, a comfort can lift your days more than a full bank account ever will. A home's more than walls and a roof. It's where your story lives, a steady anchor when the world shifts. Staying put, surrounded by the familiar, keeps the heart settled. But sometimes well-meaning kids nudge you to sell, to move in, to uproot, and that can shake more than your address. Losing that base can leave you feeling like a guest in your own life, drifting instead of rooted. There's a saying, parents have their own, and it's a reminder, holding on to your space matters. It's not about shutting out family, it's about keeping the ground beneath you solid, so you're still you, not just someone they're looking after. The flood of ads, hawking health gadgets, and miracle pills is hard to miss these days. Everyone's swearing it's the key to more years or fewer aches. But the truth is, plenty of those shiny promises are just smoke, draining wallets without delivering much. When the body starts to falter, it's tempting to grab at anything that sounds like hope, especially if you're past 65 and feeling the clock tick louder. The catch is, piling cash into unproven fixes doesn't just lighten your pockets, it adds a layer of stress when the results don't show. What works isn't flashy. Eating right, staying active, checking in with a doctor now and then. That's the backbone of a solid life, no gimmicks needed, and it keeps you grounded without chasing shadows. Then there's the person you've shared the road with longest, your partner. In old age, when the kids are off building their own lives, that bond turns into something more than it ever was. They're not just there, they're the one who gets it, who's seen it all with you. But let those little spats fester, and what should be a comfort becomes a storm. Harsh words don't just sting, they weigh on your heart, your mood, even your health. The older you get, the more that connection matters, like an old tree with deep roots. Instead of letting friction rule, it's worth softening the edges, listening more, shrugging off the small stuff. There's a phrase, old couple, that captures it. They're the one walking with you to the finish line. A steady, warm tie like that doesn't just ease the days, it makes them richer. Loneliness can hit hard though, and when it does, some think a new marriage might fill the gap. But jumping into that in old age is a dicey move. Two lives already set in their ways don't always mesh smoothly. Money squabbles, stepkids, old habits clashing, it can stir up more trouble than comfort. Sure, it might bring a spark for a while, but too often it ends in knots that tighten over time. There's a quieter way, lean into friends, grandkids, the folks already in your orbit. Those ties can lift you up without the tangle of vows. If the thought still lingers, weigh it slowly, make sure it's real, not just a fix for an empty room. Nursing homes come up too, especially when the body won't keep up anymore. For some, it's a practical step, care you can't manage alone, but it's not the cure-all, it seems. Trading your own walls for a strange bed can leave you feeling cut off, like you're watching life through a window instead of living it. The unfamiliar hum, the staff who don't know your story, it can sink you into a quiet sadness. A home you've built, close to faces you love, holds a warmth nothing else can match. Even if help is needed, bringing it to you, someone to check in, lend a hand, beats uprooting. Too many places promise care but fall short, and that gap can sting. If you've got a choice, hold tight to what's yours. It's where peace lives. Work friends fade after the desk's empty. It's just how time pulls things apart. Those late-night chats over coffee or deadline gripes don't stick like they used to. And that's okay. Life shifts, and clinging to what was only drags you back. The ones who do well let go easy, turning instead to what's here now. Family, a neighbor, a hobby that lights them up. It's not about losing value. It's about trading yesterday's ties for today's calm. That shift keeps the mind light, free of regrets that don't serve you anymore. When the tough stuff hits, big questions, hard choices, it's natural to want answers fast. But rushing doesn't always clear the fog, especially when you're older and the stakes feel higher. There's an old bit of wisdom where there's a mountain, there's a wave, and it's a nudge to wait it out. Time has a way of smoothing edges, showing paths you couldn't see in the heat of it. Pushing too hard just wears you down, body and soul, and that's a cost you can't afford. Step back, breathe, let it settle. That pause isn't weakness, it's strength, keeping you steady for whatever's next. Money talks can get messy, especially with can flash too much of what you've got. And it's like tossing a match, envy flares, or worse, fights break out. The smart ones keep it close, sharing only what's needed with the few who need to know. It's not about hiding, it's about protecting what's yours and keeping the peace. Family's tricky enough without cash turning it sour. Bragging or flaunting just begs for trouble. Quiet's better. It holds the ties together without letting greed creep in. Neighbors, though, can be a lifeline when age keeps you closer to home. There's truth in the saying, a good neighbor outshines gold. They're the ones who notice if something's off, who might grab your mail or call for help when you can't. As the world shrinks to your street, those bonds grow bigger than you'd think. A wave, a quick chat, a hand with something small. It's not just nice, it's a net that catches you when you stumble. Living shut off misses that warmth, that safety. Tend those ties, and you've got more than a street. You've got a circle that holds you up. As the years stack up, the little things we used to shrug off start to matter more. Like how well we see in the dark. Shadows aren't just inconvenient. They're a hazard waiting to trip you up. A misstep in low light can send you sprawling. And for older folks, that's not just a fall. It's a fracture, a long recovery, maybe a permanent shift. Keeping things bright isn't fussy. It's smart. A lamp flicked on, a flashlight tucked in your pocket for dusk walks. It's a small move that dodges big trouble. Those details keep you moving safe, not sidelined, and that's the kind of edge that holds your days together. It's human to glance sideways, to measure how you stack up against the next guy. But that game doesn't end well, especially when age has already shuffled the deck. Everyone's got their own load. Health, cash, luck, and staring at someone else's hand just sours your own. The ones who last don't waste energy on that. They find their footing in what's theirs. A good talk with a friend, a morning that feels right, a memory worth keeping. That's where the real wins hide. Happiness isn't out there in someone else's yard. It's in seeing what you've got and letting it be enough. There's an old bit of advice. Eat enough to fill, live long. And it's more than a catchy line, it's a lifeline. Stuffing yourself doesn't just stretch your belt. It drags on your insides, kicking up trouble from your gut to your heart. Age already slows digestion. So piling on more than you need is asking for a fight. Bloating, strain, maybe worse down the road. The fix is simple. Eat what fuels you, not what weighs you down. Smaller bites, good stuff like greens and lean cuts. A walk to settle it all. That's the rhythm that keeps you steady. It's not about starving. It's about giving your body what it can handle, so it keeps running smoothly. What you eat matters as much as how much. Heavy doses of salt, grease, or sugar don't just taste good. They hit hard, nudging up blood pressure, clogging arteries, teasing out diabetes. When digestion isn't what it was, those rich plates can linger, kicking up discomfort or feeding bigger problems. The smart play is balance. Fill up on what grows, what's fresh, what doesn't tax you. Water over soda, a peach instead of a pastry. It's not punishment, it's power. Tuning what goes in keeps the machine humming, not sputtering, and that's the difference between coasting and crashing. Feelings can cut deeper than we think, and the older we get, the more they show up in our bones. Anger, worry, the weight of what's gone, they don't just sit in your head. They seep out, stirring up stress that hits the heart, the nerves, the whole works. Life throws plenty to stew over. Health slipping, quiet days, tighter funds. But letting it rule is a choice. Flip it instead. A slow breath, a walk outside, a chat that lifts you. Studies say most sickness ties back to a mind that's tangled up. So untangling it isn't soft. It's survival. A light heart doesn't just feel good. It's medicine you can't buy. Moving keeps you alive, but it's gotta fit the frame you're in now. The hardcore stuff, lifting big, running hard, might have worked at 30, but at 70, it's a risk not worth taking. Joints creak, muscles tire, and pushing past that invites hurt. The sweet spot is softer, strolling, stretching, maybe some Tai Chi in the yard. It's not about giving up. It's about keeping what you've got without breaking it. Stick with it. Listen to what your body says, and it pays off. Better blood, stronger lungs, a mood that doesn't dip. That's the kind of fuel that stretches the road ahead. Health isn't a side note, it's the whole story. Youth lets you skate by, but age doesn't forgive neglect. A checkup skipped, an ache ignored, a diet gone wild, it all piles up, and the bill comes due later. The ones who make it past 75 treat it like a job. regular scans, solid meals, a walk most days. Little signs, twinges, fatigue, aren't noise. They're signals, and catching them early keeps small fixes from turning big. It's not just the body either. Sleep, stress, the way you see the world all tie in. Caring for that machine doesn't just add years, it makes them worth living. Sleep's another piece that shifts as we go. The old saying, old folks sleep light, isn't wrong. Nights get shorter, trickier, broken up by creaky joints or a restless mind. Skimp on it, and you're not just groggy, you're fraying, risking memory slips, heart trouble, a fog that won't lift. It's not optional, it's the reset that keeps you going. Set a rhythm, same bedtime, no late feasts, a room that's calm, and it sticks. A book before lights out, a tune to wind down. It's not fluff, it's glue for the mind and body both. Good rest isn't a luxury, it's a pillar that holds the rest up. When we're young, health feels like a given, something that just hums along in the background. But as the years roll on, it steps front and center. Nothing else holds a candle to it. All the money, the accolades, the stuff you've stacked up, it's dust if you can't stand up to enjoy it. That's the raw truth of old age. Health isn't just nice to have, it's the root of everything free and full. Stepping into those later years, the playbook's clear. Eat smart, move steady, check in with the doc, keep your head up. It takes some grit. Sure, staying sharp to what your body's whispering, never brushing off the little warnings. Wealth might buy a fancy bed, but only health lets you climb out of it. A tuned-up body doesn't just tack on time, it turns those days into something rich, something you can taste. These threads we've been pulling together, they're not just tips, they're a map for dodging the potholes that trip up so many. It's about shielding what keeps you ticking, finding a quiet joy in the years that could easily slip into shadow. Stumbling through old age isn't inevitable. It's a choice we sidestep with every careful step, every bit of wisdom we grab hold of. I hope this journey we've taken lights up something new about tending to yourself when the road gets long. Now let's wrap it with 3 big pieces to carry forward, especially when the body falters and the what-ifs loom large. Old age brings a fear that's hard to shake. Not just the gray hair or the slower gait, but the thought of lying frail alone, with no one close to lean on. It's a weight every elder feels, no matter how tough they've been. Health fading is one thing, but losing that grip on your own life, maybe pulling family down with you, that cuts deeper. When the body starts to disobey, can you still hold on to a spark? Keep the gloom from spilling over to the ones you love. Finding peace in those brittle years isn't easy, but it's the kind of strength that matters most. The dread of long bedbound days with no familiar faces nearby isn't just a personal ache. It shifts everything, throwing a wrench in the rhythm of those around you. If illness turns you sharp or sour, that heaviness spreads, wearing everyone thin, even caught in that grip. Keeping your mind steady lightens the load, not just for you but for them. Death's shadow grows long, and hearing it's near from a doctor's lips rattles anyone. Life's too big to let go, places you haven't seen, promises you meant to keep. We've all ridden the waves, highs and lows, love and fights, wins and scars, and that's what makes it ours. Holding that close, not clutching at what's lost or won, sets you free. When sickness lands, ducking it's no use. Blaming fate just shows the cracks. Real courage stares it down, chin up, chasing what's left with a fire that doesn't fade. Think of that story, a beautiful dream, where a mechanic or a tycoon, handed a brutal diagnosis, doesn't fold. They fight, ticking off skydives, fast cars, a last taste of love. When the curtain drops, the ones left behind mourn, but they're steadied by a life that burns bright to the end. Wise elders know not to chain their kids to the bedside when sickness strikes. Life moves fast now. Juggling jobs and family leaves little room for round-the-clock vigils. Take my 4th uncle. After a crash landed him in the ICU, he fretted over his kids, but none could stay glued to him. Once he stabilized, it was to hire help or split the load, and he balked, fuming that anything less than their full care was betrayal. His son quit his job to nurse him, and their money dried up fast. The sharp ones don't demand that sacrifice. They handle what they can, call in help if the wallet allows. Save the big asks for what's truly needed, like signing off on a surgery. It's not cold, it's kind, letting family breathe while you hold your own. There's a saying, live old, learn old, and it's a spark that keeps the years from dimming. Sickness and weariness can dull the edges, But leaning into life, curious, open, flips the switch back on. Don't just float through. Stretch out, laugh with the grandkids, chase what still stirs you, stay steady through the treatments. Even bedbound, the wise ones don't quit. They'll sneak a bite they shouldn't, or plan a goodbye that ties it all up. Death's not the enemy they dodge. It's the guest they meet, calm and ready. Aging's just a cycle, birth, pain, the end, and facing it with guts frees up the young ones from carrying your worries. Hey, we've just unraveled some real gems together, simple, powerful ways to keep our freedom, perfect what fuels us, and nurture the bonds that make life sweeter. Getting older doesn't mean fading into the background. It's our shot to pile up know-how, stand firm when the winds blow, and find peace even when things get messy.